This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954. Located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santo sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley.
Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks. Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo. I'm here with my wife, Christie.
Hello, hello.
Today's going to be a little different. We were supposed to have Fergie Jenkins. Been connecting with him via Instagram, and his manager, Brad, was supposed to get in touch with me, and somehow Fergie said he texted me, but he didn't. Maybe he has an old number of mine, but whatever happened, Fergie is not here. So we want Fergie. Fergie, I want you, man. I got to talk to you. Now,
Instead,
well, before we say instead,
okay.
I just want to tell everyone that we are ranked in the top 5% in listen score out of over 3 million podcasts in our genre globally.
How about that?
How about that? Top 5%. That's pretty cool. And that's coming from a living room of just the two of us. All right, but we're talking baseball, we're talking entertainment, and we're talking heart, really.
We're talking stories.
Stories, yeah.
And today, can I get to that? Are
Sure.
we ready? Okay. So instead, because we don't have Fergie, we're doing a little switcheroo here, and I am going to interview Jeff. Because a lot of you, you're learning a little bit about Jeff through these interviews, but there's much more about your backstory that people don't know. So we're going to get into it today.
Okay.
All right? After these messages.
Hey everybody, I was in Encino, California the other day at a meeting, and I get out of there and I'm hungry as can be, man. And there's traffic, LA traffic. And I'm thinking, I got to get some side streets here like my dad did in Wrigley. And I wind up at Coldwater Canyon and Riverside Drive, and there's Gino's East Pizza. Boom, park the car, go inside, and I order a tavern pizza, cheese and sausage, my favorite, top 3 foods of all time. And there's the owner, Dan and Todd, and they're like, hey man, you're on the TV. I'm like, yeah, right, guys. They love to razz me once in a while. And sure enough, I was. My dad's documentary from MLB was playing. But I had no time for that. I had to eat my pizza. I devoured that thing in a minute. I was so hungry. You got to go to Gino's East for the greatest pizza around. Gino's East, LA. Put it in your Google's map right now. It's going to be our place to go, me and Christie, on Friday's happy hour. Go to Gino's East, right near Coldwater Canyon and the 101. Put it in your Google's map now. We'll see you there.
Okay, Jeff, so let me ask you the obvious question. When you were young, did you think you were going to be a big leaguer?
Yes, because I lived in the environment. Like, I didn't see anything else that I would be. And you got to understand, because I was around big leaguers, I loved being in my dad's light. I loved baseball. I just didn't think that there would be something else I would do because my dad did it, and I should do it too.
And let me ask you a little bit about, when you were playing, was it pony ball or?
Pony ball? Pony league.
Pony league.
Pony ball sounds like a character in The Outsiders. That was, he was Pony something.
Well, Pony League. So how old were you in Pony League?
Pony League, I was 14.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So you were in like the paper. I mean, you have all these newspaper clippings of, your batting average and.
Right.
Yeah. So talk a little bit
Well,
about
because
that.
we saved that because kids love. Well, I used to always put, I don't know if other kids did this, but I would put up my statistics on the wall in my bedroom and come home and write if I went 2 for 4 or 3 for 5, how many RBIs, a home run. I would do it every day when I was playing baseball and from Little League to Pony League and through high school. And I just, in Pony League, I felt at one time, because I remember talking to my brother about this, he felt like, he was never really the best player out there. He says that because there were other good players out there, but I think Ronnie probably had the most potential if you really worked with him. So he kind of took that a different way. I actually knew I was the best player in the league when I was playing at 14. I got this award called the Nick Siracides Award. And it's crazy how Nick Siracides, there's a lot to that award because my dad was friends with Nick's father. Nick Siracides was a kid in junior high who was probably the best athlete in our class. And he was a year older than me, but we were in the same grade. Because I had a late birthday. I was September 24th. So when Pony League came around, I was back in Pony League again come freshman year. So I was playing with the people my age, where a lot of the times, I would have had another year in high school today. But Nick Siracides was this kid that could play the game. I mean, he could run, he could hit, he was the best player in Pony League the year before I was on his team, the same team, Renekers. And Nick got electrocuted in his backyard and got killed.
By lightning or?
No, he was what do they call it? Prodding for worms. He liked to fish. He lived right across the street from North Shore Country Club in Glenview, where I grew up. And the Siracides, I didn't really know him well. I knew him like, hey, how you doing, Nick? He knew me, but I wish I got to know him. But my dad was friends with his father after that. I mean, they moved into our area in 7th or 8th grade. And after that, Nick's dad was a member of North Shore Country Club, like my dad was. They played golf together a lot. And even when my dad, when I was doing This Old Cub and we were filming that Hall of Fame scene, Mr. Siracides was there. And I talked to him about Nick more than a few times. And it's a sad story, how he died. And I remember going to his funeral in 8th grade. And they had an award for the best player in Pony League after that, called the Nick Siracides Award. And it's the best award I ever got. I won that award on our all-star team. And at that time, I felt like, I'm good. But then life kind of changed.
Well, yeah. So then you go play college ball.
No, you missed high school.
Okay, talk about high school.
Well, I think from that time, my parents got divorced right then. So that was a big thing that happened. So when that happened, things seemed to change. Focus and, my dad, I look at my dad's stage of life, like when he was playing ball, he was this hard-nosed, crosses the white lines, no one's his friend, and he played the game like no one else. I mean, players played like him, but he was 100% all the time, serious. And even if you look at his interviews, when he was interviewed during his career, he's spot on. He's almost like, even in his young 20s, you're like, this guy's developed. He knows what he's talking about. My dad was a genius when it came to baseball. He knew everything about the game. He was the game. So there was so much to my dad that he had because, he grew up, in the inner city of Seattle, right down the block from a minor league ballpark, worked there his whole youth, all the way till he was 18. So baseball was everything to him. And I felt like when baseball ended for him, he lost a little of his light, a little bit of his spirit. Just, I could say that now at my age. I'm turning 60 tomorrow. Can't believe it, right? And I could say that now. I could say he lost a little bit of his light there. He went into business and he was out of the game. And until he got back into the game is really when he got his light back. Like, he should have never left the game of baseball. Baseball was everything to him. So during that time when they were divorced and things were going on, I just think that our world kind of got split up from what it was growing up. And that was a tough transition, I think, for all of us, Ronnie, Linda. And
is that when your acne started?
Yeah. I got cystic acne when I was about 15. And people would say, oh, you just got adolescent acne. No, I got cystic acne. And I remember when I got it, like only 230 50,000 people get it, where you get these cysts on your chest and your back and your neck and your face. And I had to go to the dermatologist once a week because back then there really was no cure for it. And Dr. Mania Levitin was her name. And she was a survivor of the Holocaust, which is amazing, her family. And she would slice me every week.
Yeah,
like,
she would use the lancet.
The lancet,
Yeah.
the face, the neck, the back, the waistline. And I remember my mom would wait in the waiting room, and she could hear me just grunting because, it was such a confined space. But I went through that, and that kind of it was hard. It was because you feel a little bit like a monster, and it's tough to take your shirt off, and when you're playing sports, you're sweating. And that was a big thing that came on. I don't know why I got it. Like, my dad had some cystic acne younger. You could tell he had some scars on his face, but not like I had. And I never thought about, like, I really think now that their divorce rocked me more than I think my brother and my sister maybe was a little too young. I don't know why it rocked me a lot. Like, I didn't realize that. And maybe that's where it came from. Like, my dad talks about how his diabetes might have came from his dad leaving.
Right, like a traumatic event.
Yeah. And
who did you live with? Did you live with your mom?
Mom. We lived with our mom. And it was tough because I wasn't the greatest son to my mom at that time. Because I kind of blamed, like, why is he out? Why is he leaving? And I didn't really understand it much. And she was upset, rightfully. So it was just like one of those things where you're young, you're being led by your environment, and there really isn't much guidance on that. We didn't go and talk to anybody. You just kind of,
those were the days, right?
Yeah, you just move on.
Motor
So,
through.
but I took my dad's side at first. And because I just,
He was the embodiment of your fantasy childhood.
Well, I wouldn't call it fantasy. That was our reality.
You lived in a fantasy land, as we said in the last episode. You did. You lived in a fantasy world.
We
so
did,
he was the embodiment of that.
But it was our reality. So that's the weird thing about it. It was our reality. And so, I think, and I think the cystic acne, if I had, like, inherited that, it just full blown came out. And so, you're getting, people say things to you about it, and you're self-conscious about it. So when you're self-conscious about something like that, it takes away the things that you need to focus on. And I think that hurt a little bit, but I still went on and played and
good
loved
enough
the
to
game.
get into college ball.
Well, yeah. Well, I played high school ball, and I did pretty well there, but not well enough to, like, our seasons were so short that it was tough to really scout anybody. But I went to a small school in Florida my freshman year, and I was only 17. And I went to a Division II school called St. Leo in Florida. And I went to play ball, but not really on a ride. That they knew I was coming, and they didn't have many scholarships, but it was a really good baseball school. And I swear when I got there, I felt like I was playing with 25-year-olds. These guys look like men. It was one of those Division II schools that you wonder if anyone went to school. And they just played baseball. I mean, it was cool, but I was outmatched, definitely outmatched. And so, but I made the team, and I was there for a year. And then I transferred to a junior college back home at Harper and just tried to take care of my acne because it got really bad.
Yeah, Florida's a terrible place for acne.
Yeah. It was horrible. It was everywhere. And then played at Harper, and then I started getting arm problems, and then I actually took off a year. I went just to school to go to school. I went to Miami, Ohio. I had some friends that went there. I don't think, I look back at that was a place that I would pick on my own. It was almost kind of like I followed some friends there. And that's kind of where my life was going. I was following others rather than pursuing what I think, I should have pursued.
So you didn't play ball at Miami of Ohio?
I didn't play the first year. And then I started getting bigger, and I started developing. And I'm like, you know what? I played a summer league that I was really good in. And the next year, I walked onto the team and made it and started. I was hitting fifth in the lineup.
So your baseball
at Division
dream was
I.
still alive at that point.
It started coming back.
Yeah.
There. And I met some great guys on the team at Miami, Ohio. It was a cool team. And I was good. I could hit. But my arm, I had arm trouble. So I was DHing, but I could hit.
So that arm trouble, where did you get that arm trouble? You got it at Harper?
Yeah, I think there. And then I never really got it fixed. And just lack of like follow through, lack of like, okay, stay on top of this. There was no urgency. There was no, like I said, me and Ryan were talking about it a little bit. I just feel like at that time, my dad in his world, I think he was in business. He was having some hard times too. And until he got back in the ball, I mean, there was a period there in the 80s that were just tough. And I feel like when I got back in the ball, I loved it. But then I run into a problem that my brother kind of had in college.
Is this the coach?
The coach. I never had a problem with a coach. And this coach, for some reason, he had to make an example. He got hard on me. I mean, and maybe I wasn't ready for it because I never had to deal with that before. But then that's when I started seeing like, okay, maybe this isn't as fun as I thought it was anymore. But it was weird. He was a strange coach to a lot of the guys on the team, but he definitely was extra hard on me. And I'm not just saying that. I think some of my teammates will say that too. He would take me out of a game just on one play. It was crazy stuff. He would double hit. We played double hitters in college in Division I in Ohio because the weather was never that great. So you had to get 2 games in. It wasn't like you were playing out west or down south. So we had double headers every time we played in the Mid-American Conference. And I remember he would have us stand up the whole game and say that, you're not going to get any break in between games. If you're hungry, eat the other players. Just stupid stuff. I mean, I'm like, how did this guy become a Division I coach? But I had a decent year. I fell off at the end, but I had a pretty decent year. And then I was going to come back for another. I actually had 2 more years left to play. And then this coach wrote us a letter and sent it to our homes. And I was friends with a lot of the guys that just graduated, were seniors that year. And this coach wrote this hideous letter about, next year's everyone's going to be like a freshman. No one's going to get away. We never got away with anything anyway. And so I decided. Like a
scene straight out of Dazed and Confused.
It was. It was one of these crazy letters. And I kept the letter until like, I think 5 years ago. And a bunch of us got together, Miami, Ohio alums, and read the letter and we burned it. It was funny. I carried that letter around for a lot of my adult life, but it was obnoxious. It was just like, really, this isn't baseball. And I decided not to play. And I thought that was a bad decision I made. I kind of made it on my own. I remember my dad saying, yeah, if you don't want to play, don't play. But I should have played. I should have got over that.
And you had nightmares about it for a while.
For a while. I still have them once in a while. I'm out there on the bench at Miami, wondering like, hey, let me in, man. And so, no, but it's one of these things that you just, again, I go back to what my brother Ron Jr. was saying. The guidance wasn't there. Although there was one cool thing when I was playing at Miami. I had a great fall and I was starting. Then all of a sudden when we went on our first spring trip, the coach played me in one game. I hit a home run. Then he didn't play me again. And I'm thinking, what's going on here, man? And I remember my dad asking, he goes, are you playing? I said, no, he's sitting me. And he got pissed off. He said, it's one of those. He called this coach up, which was great because it got to a point where it was getting ridiculous. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And next thing you know, he talked to the coach, and the coach suddenly, all right, put me in. And I started playing really well because my dad just wanted to know, does he have a bit of a jealousy, envy thing here that he thinks that I'm trying to be, I think I'm more than I am because I'm Ron Santo's son, which was completely the opposite. But that's the perspective a lot of people can get.
Right.
And my dad just wanted to make sure that wasn't the reason and said, hey, if you're not going to play him, tell him. He doesn't need this shit. And that was kind of the conversation, which was really cool. And things went pretty well. And then at the end of the season, we kind of faded as a team. And then this letter came and that was that. That was the end of my baseball career. I kind of quit, and I regretted it. And I don't anymore because I got over that, but I did for many, many years.
Yeah, yeah. And then you didn't finish school. You were Spanish class away.
Why do you got to bring that up? I mean, seriously. Yeah, I didn't finish school either. I had one credit, and yeah, there was a lot of open, like my shoelaces were untied. That's how I feel. A lot of that stuff went. I just tie your shoelaces, man. So I got, after that, you don't think it's over because you're like, what's next? And I just wasn't ready for anything.
How long did it take you to figure out that movies were the creative arts was your path? I mean, because you started working at the Board of Trade. How did that happen?
Just because a lot of people went down to the work there, and I followed that group, and I figured, what else am I going to do? I really wasn't ready for much. I look at it now. I could say that now. I couldn't say that then. You're just you're in the moment. You're in the environment, and you're going where your friends are going, which is completely stupid.
Yeah, so you're following that train, and then you're drinking a lot, and you're kind of dreamless.
Yep. Yeah, I was drinking a lot. I didn't know that either. It's like, but I was lost. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that I loved entertainment. I even loved it when my dad played. My dad, I would talk about it. He loved to dance. I liked to dance, sing. I liked all of it.
Oh yeah, those I skipped over the videos that you did when you were a kid.
Yeah, we had a I had an 8mm camera. Me and Ronnie did when we were young. We did shows. We did just a lot of stuff. I mean, we were part of something that I felt like I just loved movies. My dad loved movies, so it was and entertainment and baseball. Baseball is entertainment. And my dad was an entertainer. He's out there clicking his heels. And he was that way off the field. I mean, he owned a room when he walked into it. He was...
I think you do too.
He had charisma.
You do too.
Yeah, but see, the difference is, though, the light is shining. My dad is the famous one. We are the kids. And so when the kids aren't around the famous one, there's a different light shining on the kids. I don't care who they are. If you're a kid of a famous person, when you're not around that famous person, the light is much different. And it's not even really a light. And you're naive until you become strong. Right. And if you don't get that strength, then you're going to have a lot of problems. So I didn't have that strength for many years. That my confidence was lacking. A lot of things just fell by the wayside. And I feel like now I can look back at that and go, oh, man. You don't know that, a kid is coming after you or has a certain, I'm not saying a kid, but I can even go into when, my dad was playing and we started playing baseball, and we also joined a hockey league at this Roosevelt Park. I remember I just was learning how to skate and get out in a hockey team here, and some kid comes and just nails me and then keeps nailing me the whole game. And I'm thinking, if this is hockey, it sucks. Why is he hitting me? And obviously you look back at it now and you go, yeah, sure, that jackass's father's like, hey, go after Ron Santo's son, show him you're something. You don't even know this stuff is going on, right? You're not even aware of this kind of like competition from like afar.
Right, you're not even aware of their perspective.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not. And that's something that I think takes a while to understand. Now, when it came to baseball, I could fight every battle possible. Hockey was something new I was taking on. So anything new that you're taking on, there's a hesitation there. It was like baseball was my world. I knew everything about it. I knew how to play it. I knew how to be in it. So when that world...
So let's talk about 8 Men Out.
8 Men Out, yeah. So 8 Men Out, I was... we had Randy on. I was working at one of Randy's fantasy camps that he had at Wrigley Field. The 80s. He would have his main camp down in Arizona. Then he did some camps at Wrigley Field, and I know he also went to St. Louis and other places, but I started working at Wrigley Field with him. And at that time, John Cusack came down to Wrigley Field. I remember coming down, and he wanted to get some tutelage, some baseball experience from Randy or any professional down there that could help him, because he just got cast in 8 Men Out, playing Buck Weaver, the third baseman for the Chicago White Sox that was caught up in the scandal, the Black Sox scandal. And so I met John, and then we just had a conversation, and he said he's looking for some help. And I said, well, I think I can help you. And we just started a friendship. So we would go to this park out by Evanston where he lived and throw around the ball and take ground balls. And then my dad came out and worked with him, which was really cool. And so we just formed a friendship. And John said, hey, I'm going to be doing the movie. Why don't you come out? I'll put you in as an extra, as a ball player. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. So I went down to Indiana where they were filming it. And John Sayles was the director. I got to meet John Sayles, and Charlie Sheen was on set, all these guys, and D.B. Sweeney, and I played for the St. Louis Browns. I was on the team, and so I had one at bat. I hit into a double play in the beginning of the movie, which I think I got it on the second take. I had to hit at the second base, but it was great. I fell in love with the world again, and it was kind of strange because here I am in a movie. I love the atmosphere, the movie set. I'm watching everything go on behind the scenes, and it's about baseball. So, it's the two coming together, really, right there. The two worlds are right there for me. And I'm like, this I could do. And I didn't know what. I love stories. And so I just started, after that experience, I started getting scripts, started reading scripts. John Sayles gave me the script for 8 Men Out. I started reading that, understanding the structure. I started buying books. And that was the start of the journey. And
then you moved to Marina Del Rey?
No. Well, first I did a play in Chicago called The 25th Man, which was the last guy on the bench. It was a play that it did all right. It was cute. It was funny. They were with a friend of mine, Dan Foley. We wrote it together. We had a great time doing it. And it was at the Halstead Theater right there off of Halstead in Chicago. And our character had vertigo, and so it was like he was trying to make a comeback, and the whole play takes place on a bench, and he's like the cheerleader. He's the 25th man cheering the team on and saying, I'm coming back. Wait till I get back in here. We're gonna win it all. And so it was that kind of play. It was a comedy, and it was a one-man play. Well, actually we had 2 or 3 characters. We had Yosh Kawana, who would come and sit next to, his name was Spence Taylor. And he would sit next to Spence, and Spence would talk to the fans, and during the game, he would talk to anyone he could talk to. And Yosh would come by, give him crap, and then the rookie, he would try and there was this rookie that was just coming up, and Spence was trying to tell him about the big leagues and how to get ready for it. So it was an endearing play. It was, it was all right, but it was our start. And then from there, I wrote a play called A Rough and a Diamond, that was based on Randy's fantasy camp, about three players that show up early to this camp, kind of like Waiting for Godot. They show up to this camp. They don't know what they're showing up for. They're there early in this old clubhouse as they wait for these so-called campers to arrive, and it was called A Rough and a Diamond. That turned out to be a nice play. I started getting better at it, and I sent the play to Joe Mantegna, and Joe really liked it and said, you got to come out to L.A., kid. We'll put it out. We'll put it up at one of the theaters here, and he put it at the Cannon Theater in Beverly Hills, and then him and Dennis Franz did a reading for it, and Richie Zavalia for national radio, and now it's on iTunes. It's called A Rough and a Diamond, and it's what brought me out to Hollywood, and I took a lot of meetings over that play in 1994.
And the dream was alive.
And it was, yeah, and that's when, and I say this because that's when I really started to understand the mentality of surviving and going for something that's your own. Meaning, like, my dad had this mentality growing up, and I wish I had more of that when I played ball, like the urgency, the I don't want to call it.
Well, you had the the man who knew everything as your father. You're expecting to receive that information, and he's not bestowing it. So you're, now having no resources, you improvise.
Well, I don't know if I was expecting it. Like I don't
unconsciously.
Maybe, but, and I got to say, my dad was a busy guy. So, and then again, my dad, I think Ronnie brought up a great point. He got nervous of Ron Jr. and got nervous of like putting too much pressure, and maybe, I just came from a different world and just let these guys be who they're going to be. And maybe, I got to say, I never went up to him and said, "Hey, Dad, help me. I need your help here." I could have done that, and I wish I did. But so many things happened so quick. Like I said, the divorce and then the cystic acne. So, but I got to say, when my dad came to a game when I was playing in Miami for Miami, Ohio, he came to watch me play against Western Michigan. Mox, Mito. He.
So, hold on a second. I think we have to pause because the dogs are hungry.
Okay.
So we'll be back after these messages. That moment was brought to you by the Audio Suite, a sound recording, design, editorial, and mixing company for film, broadcast, advertising, music, podcasts, audiobooks, and multimedia industries. The Audio Suite provides high-quality services at cost-effective solutions to meet your post-production needs. Voiceover, narration, ADR, sound design, sound effects, editorial and sweetening, recording, mixing, mastering, audio restoration, and more. The Audio Suite will get you to the finish line on time and on budget. Steve Harrison, owner, designer, mixer, has decades of experience and has worked with various clients from HBO Films to Penguin Random House, to us, Santo Films. When we needed post-production mastering for our independent film Dead in 5 Heartbeats, the Audio Suite was our go-to place. Steve is knowledgeable, reliable, and always delivers the highest quality. Go to www.audiosuitestudios.com. We highly recommend. Okay, so you were talking about your dad coming down to see you play.
Yeah, we were playing Western Michigan at Western Michigan, and he came down with a friend, and I had a great doubleheader because that's all we play were doubleheaders, and I hit a home run, 2 doubles off the wall. I had like 7 RBIs, and it's the one time my dad saw me as like this matured ball player versus Pony League high school. And that felt good. Like I felt like, wow, okay. And I don't know why it didn't continue, but that moment, I just remember, I remember the guys on the team all knew he was there, and I always got along with my teammates, which was so cool. I mean, I miss that. I miss the camaraderie of baseball. And they were so happy, like, because they're like, we're nervous your dad's here. And I have a game like I had 2 games. And it was just good to see. It was just great to see, like, my teammates happy that I didn't, like, choke underneath the pressure of my dad being there. So, yeah, that's just a moment I remember. And but after that, that was kind of like the last moment of my baseball career that I can truly remember in a good way. So.
And then in the movie sense of, things, so having a baseball career in the essence of on the movie screen became something that you could imagine. You could put together plays with baseball, as the subject matter and use that as, a backdrop for your art.
Yeah, I've always felt like, even I can remember this, my first year of college, I remember sitting on the bench because I sat on a bench a lot at that Division II school where they had 25-year-olds playing. I sat on the bench a lot, and I would just think about, like, growing up, like, what it was like, because that world seemed to just disappear, and I wanted to write about that. I wanted to tell it, like, what I felt as a kid. And it's always stayed in me, and I wind up doing This Old Cub, which I thought was a gift.
Well, hold on, you're skipping over some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's keep it in the chronological sense of things. So, so after the plays and you moved to LA, now you're in the thick of the forest, right? You're having quotes all up on the wall. You're reading Joseph Campbell. You're in the thick of learning. You're reading a lot of scripts. Mm-hmm. You're writing scripts. And how did you come to your first film, Liar's Poker? How did you think about doing that? What inspired you to do that? And how did you even think to get it done?
Yeah, I was so focused on making a movie because it was hard to get into certain lines, like if you didn't have a film degree or such like that. And it was hard to go and be someone's assistant in Hollywood because I couldn't take that so much.
So I had to find another way to do it. And there's a group of guys always in Hollywood. And when I came out here, you get the misfits. The misfits come to Hollywood. They're dreamers. They have charisma. They came from a certain part of life that there's a good story behind it. So I was hanging out with those kind of guys. And I just felt like I was focused. Like you said, I lived on the Venice Boardwalk. Literally, you walk out of my place, there's the Venice Boardwalk. It was like an old hotel. It used to be like an old hotel, and it was 3 stories, and you could rent it for $500. We didn't have any heat or air conditioning. In the winter, I'd have the oven on. But I loved it. I felt like, wow. I got really big into Joseph Campbell. I had quotes everywhere on different people, and so I was really focused. And then you go and flash, over to Chicago. My dad's, what are you doing out there? Because it was hard to understand. Like I'm going in this direction now. That's when my dad started broadcasting, which was cool. He started getting a second life, and I loved feeling that because then we could talk about baseball again. And I really believe, like when my dad got back into baseball, that saved him in so many ways. And he just needed to be there. And you got to see this hard-nosed ball player now becoming this kind of insecure announcer. And to me, people loved it because he figured out to be himself. And I almost equate him to like a George Foreman type of guy because George was so serious boxing. He was great, and then later in his life, it's like he's this affable,
So your dad's, second act was inspiring also to you because you are on your second dream now.
Yeah, kind of. I got to say that I did. Yeah. So I was determined. It was when you kind of the light goes on and you go, oh wow, I see things now.
So you wrote Liar's Poker.
And Liar's Poker was really kind of a story about this one. I mean, these 4 guys go fishing and only one survives, and he's caught in a mess. It's a business mess, and he owns a nightclub, but the financer of the nightclub basically is trying to control him, and he's kind of tied into dirty things, and so it was a little avant-garde, but it was really about this guy just busting out of this control and being his own guy. So I could relate to that. And I remember reading the Sidney Lumet book, and I studied Sidney Lumet. I studied so many directors, but his book was about know your emotion. And my emotion, I was like, the emotion in this movie is no emotion. It's self-control. Mm. It's keep your cards close to yourself and don't give anything away. And the one that speaks the less wins. And so it's kind of like where I wanted to go because I felt like I was following a pack of people for too long, and I wanted to break out and just be my own guy, and that's kind of like where Liar's Poker came from.
And so you had the script. How do you I mean, back then it was a little different than it is now.
Yeah.
So did you just have an agent? Did you?
No, I did have an agent. I found an agent. I had Ron Shelton's agent, Sanford and Gross. I was there. Brad Gross was his name. He liked me, and he's like, I love your writing, and I said, I'm doing this movie. So they gave me as much advice, but I went out and got the finance. I had a friend, Billy Savino, who put up the financing, and it was tough because you're on your own, but I put everything into that movie, and funny thing is, it's coming out digitally now. In October for a digital release. It's my first movie. It was shot well. It was acted decently, and I studied the craft hard. If I didn't do that movie, I couldn't do This Old Cub. So I look at that movie and I go, thank God for that movie because then now I was ready for This Old Cub.
Right.
And people don't realize that. He just did a movie on his phone. No. I went through so much to get to This Old Cub. And
Liar's Poker was shot in real film.
Yep, 35 millimeter.
35 millimeter.
Yeah, we had Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers starred in it. Pamela Gidley, Richard Tyson. There were some good actors in it. So
it was at Blockbuster. You could rent it at Blockbuster.
Yeah, we were one of the first to get a Blockbuster deal, which was unique at the time. Because I became friends with Troy Duffy, who did the Boondock Saints. And he got a Blockbuster deal, and introduced me to the Blockbuster. So that deal at Blockbuster, you could see Boondock Saints everywhere in Blockbuster. And then Liar's Poker came out. We had 2 shelves
That's
at
awesome.
every Blockbuster in the country. So that was a really cool thing. But finding the money is always hard in film and independent film. So it's tough for the investors, and that was a hard thing on me. That getting, the money back and feeling responsible for it. So that took a toll, but it was, I learned a lot, and I said, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not turning back.
And
ever.
that was 1998?
1997, 98. Yeah, it came out in Blockbuster in 2000. When you do a film like that, it's 5 years of your life, easily. From even before, it's more, especially when
I know that now, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't have to tell you. So,
but it's funny is that in 1998, so I'm down in Long Beach,
right,
and we haven't met. So I'm going to college. I'm studying writing, and you're just about a half an hour up north.
I could have used you, babe, big time. I'm telling you. Oh, I could have used you.
I was a little wild back then.
Yeah, I know you were, but we're all wild. But we all have what we have inside of us, and you have brought so much to our creative life of writing and just everything.
Oh, thanks, babe. We're a good blend.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, I have a female perspective now that mine was all male, 100%. Because I was always alone,
That was your perspective.
That was my perspective. Yeah, big time.
All right, so let's talk about This Old Cub.
Sure.
So how did you get, were you just on vacation back in AZ, and then this came about with your mom suggesting this? Or were you still living in?
No, I was living out in LA.
Okay.
And I was working at the time. I was doing a job where I was getting signatures for locations. It was brutal. I would go to homes, and it was in one of those kind of, after Liar's Poker, you struggle and you're trying just to pay your rent. So I was getting signatures for locations, going and knocking on doors, saying, okay, can we use for big studio stuff? It was just a job where you just walk the streets of Hollywood in certain areas where they're going to be shooting and get signatures to make sure that the neighborhood knows that there's going to be a movie here, so that everyone's aware and they don't wind up, bitching about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that job, that was interesting. And so I was actually, what happened was my dad went in the hospital. It got bad. So I actually took some time off and went back to Chicago to help him with his leg, because he tried to save it in every way he could, because he got an ulcer under his left foot, and it wouldn't go away. And with diabetics is, the farthest from your heart, you're not going to get the blood flow down there. And my dad was losing the blood flow with his arteries dissipating. And so I remember traveling out there, and we all did. Linda and Ronnie was already out there, and he was trying to get a surgery where they would cut off his toes, take a blood source out of his stomach, and then shave the top of his foot, put the blood source on top of the foot, and then graft his thigh to put skin over the foot, so that could be the blood source for his foot to heal. And it was such a process that my dad went into cardiac arrest, almost died from it.
Oh my God.
Had to get paddled out of it. And this is in 2001. And from there, we were all down in Chicago at Northwestern Memorial and just wait, what's going to happen. And he came out of that. And then they went again to do the surgery 2 weeks later, and it's successful. He gets through it. Well, now he goes back home, and I go back home with him. It's just me and him in Chicago. So as I'm helping him, he never watched Sopranos before, so that was great, because I turned him on to the whole Sopranos.
Oh, that's funny.
And so we just sat there for 2 weeks while he's trying to heal and watched Sopranos. And I took care of him. And during that time, I would drain, everything that's going on with the foot. And I remember he went into a couple diabetic reactions that I had to wake him up. And I just learned so much being there with him and what he had to go through and dealing with his diabetes and making sure that he's going to get through this.
And you never knew that before because he kept it to himself.
Yeah. So I remember when I reacted to his first, he had a low blood sugar in the middle of the night. And I was sleeping in the room, in his guest room, and I heard this, like, it felt like it was a whale coming out of the water, spouting water. I'm like, what's going on? I walk into his room, and his covers are off, and he's just breathing really heavy. And I'm like, and I go to wake up, Dad, and he wouldn't wake up. I'm like, Dad, wake up. All of a sudden, his eyes wake up, and he just goes, I need something. And I'm like, oh my God. Right then I knew. I ran and got him orange juice. And I get this big glass of orange juice, and I give it to him. And he downs the whole orange juice, sitting up. And with his leg, with his foot, still healing. And he downs it. And he just stares at me, and he's still not, like, registering with me. I'm like, another glass. And I run to the refrigerator, come back. He downs that glass. All of a sudden, I'm just watching him, and I just watch him come back to life. And he goes, first thing he said, prick me for blood. Take my reading with the glucometer. And I took it, and it was like at 60. So he must have been under 40, 30. He was low. And so he goes, all right, give me a bowl of cereal. Now he's speaking to me. I'm like, oh, thank God. He's speaking to me. So come back, and before you know it, he's back to normal. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I go, did you remember me No. Do you remember drinking the orange juice? No.
Wow.
That's how programmed he was.
Wow.
To deal with this. And I'm like, how many times did he do this during his playing career?
Right.
And then have to go play in a game. So I was just like, oh my God, this man's a beast. I'm like, oh my God. And so we wound up like watching another Sopranos that night because we were awake, right? So it's just, so I really got a great lesson of like what this man has gone through.
Yeah.
And so now we think I remember we went down to Northwest. We're like, all right, we're going to send you to Arizona because his wife was in Arizona. So was like Linda was living there and Ronnie was in Chicago though. And I'm like, all right, we're going to go back to Arizona. They say it's going to heal. And I was skeptical about this thing healing. And when we got back to Arizona, we're flying, and I could tell on the plane, I could smell this odor, and I'm like, this is not good. It was like, Dad, you see, he's like, yeah, and the foot went gangrene, and that's when, all right, you got to take it off, and that's when my dad was like, just okay, take it from the knee below, and they did it. It was successful. He got through it. He went and did a whole year of broadcasting with one leg. And then the next year, same time, he developed, while he was in the hospital for the first amputation, he developed a sore on his second heel, foot. And that followed him throughout the whole season. And so when the season ended in 2002, he was in the same boat with the first that he had with the first leg. So that was really difficult. We're like, okay, are we going to go through this again, trying to save a foot and have cardiac arrest and all this stuff? And
right.
I remember my dad saying, if I take the second leg, can I walk on two prosthetic legs and broadcast for the Cubs? And the doctor looked at him and said, yes. He said, take the second leg.
Wow.
So right from that moment, I came back to Arizona at that time. I come from LA back to Arizona to help out with the family. Linda's there. Ronnie came in.
And that's when your mom suggested that
and then, I was staying with my mom. And I said, can you believe this, what he just said to the doctor? And she said to me, now, they've been divorced for quite a few years. And she says, this would be a great story. You have to tell the story. It'd be a great documentary, what he's going through.
She was right.
And it's just the light bulb, like, wow, you're right. This is amazing. Because dealing with his first leg a year ago, I'm like, if anyone sees this, I mean, you're talking about should have been a Hall of Fame player at the time, but the caliber of this guy and what he had to go through, and me as his son realizing, like, wow, I didn't even know the depths of this because he kept it so close to himself, that this is what this disease does. It's insidious. And he played with this disease and got through it because he knew he had it.
So he played with knowing he had it and knowing what he needed to do, and he never missed a game. And it's like you start to just go, wait a second, how did he do it? Because if you really see what it becomes, it's even more miraculous. So when my mom said that to me, I'm like, yeah, I have to tell this story. I have to tell it. So now the big thing is telling my dad that I have to tell this story. And are you ready to tell the story? While he's about to lose his second leg.
Right.
So I remember having the conversation. I went to the hospital, sat next to his bed, and I basically sat down and said, I was at Mom's house, and she thought this could be a great documentary. And I agree with her, Dad, and I'd like to tell your story. And he looked at me like, son, I don't know. Like, he was just, I do this all the time. No, it's always first the no. No. You think of all the things
so
that
true.
could go
you do.
wrong before you're even thinking about.
And then it's like logic, and then okay.
Yeah, right. So, and then he did the whole no, and I could tell he's looking like he felt bad, like he knew I wanted to tell his story so bad, and he didn't want to disappoint me. But he's like, I'm gonna put it down. No, I don't. I'm like, but Dad, look how many diabetics can see what's going on. Look at how many people don't know what you went through. I was with you last year. I didn't know. And as soon as I talked about the diabetics understanding and how many people he can inspire with this, then he kind of, you could just see like himself come back.
Yeah, there's something that you always said to me, that it's like act as if you're on television. So that's the kind of mentality you were thinking of, is that you act better when there's a camera on you, and that mindset. You knew that he would be his best self in front of the camera.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No. Hell no. I didn't know that. I knew that I had to capture a story. I didn't know what he was going to be in front of the camera.
So that you told me is inspiration that you got from watching your dad.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't know how he was going to act in front of the camera. But once he said to me, remember this, he said, okay, I'll give it 2 weeks. If I don't like what's going on, I'm going to cancel it all. So I said, all right, let's go. So I went out and bought at the time they didn't have really the HD, bought this mini DV camera, and I just started shooting him at the hospital and following him around. And after the 2 weeks, he didn't say a word.
And so that's when you're like, okay, we're on. I got to go get financing. And
Yep. Did all that while I was still filming him. I got a friend out here that worked at Playtone. I got to know really well, Tim Comstock. I'm like, hey, man, you want to do this with me? And he came on board, and the two of us together, went out and raised the money, and we got some people in Chicago. Billy Polano was a big source that helped me, got involved because he's been there from day one. I've known Billy since I was born, basically, the Polano family. And so Billy started helping out, and we raised, enough to make the film. And the rest is history.
And you did a tour, theatrical tour?
I did. We did. It was obviously a lot of hard work. And what I learned on my first film is like, okay, I'm going to make sure I navigate through every arena, from raising the money to how we're going to shoot this to selling the movie. And I got Ira Deutschman involved. Actually, Ira called me up. Ira used to run Fine Line Features, which was the art house of New Line Cinema. And Ira was well known in the independent world, right up there with Harvey in a way, kind of the opposite of a Harvey Weinstein. And Ira was a big Cub fan. And when we showed the first showing of it in a private
theater in Chicago. It was across the street from the Chicago Theater, and I invited a bunch of sports writers and stuff, and showed the first clip of it. And the sports writer wrote a great review on it, article on it, and Ira saw that and said, called the sports writer and said, "Can you tell Jeff Santo I want to talk to him?" And that's how I got involved with Ira, and he came out to L.A. and wound up, guiding this film with myself and Tim along the way to distribute. And I told Ira, I'm like, "Hey, listen, I'm going to be part of everything. So if you're going to take this on, I'm going to be with you in distribution. I'm going to make sure how this thing's going out there. I want to learn everything. And I want to make sure we get this in the right places." And it was the first time that anyone brought a digital projector into theater. I was the first one to do that with Emerging Pictures. And he brought in his own projectors in like a select amount of theaters in Chicago that we showed at first. And then we went to Wisconsin, went to Indiana, we went to LA. We went all over the place. So Ira was instrumental, and I was with him the whole way. And the biggest thing that happened for that film was the Cub convention. This was 2003. And John McDonough said, "Hey, listen, I'll show it at the Cub convention to all these fans. Let's premiere it there." And I'm thinking, well, that's my first, as a filmmaker and guarding like the financial side of it because of my first film, I'm like, we're going to let 1,500 fans watch this for free? I'm thinking, no. And so I remember saying to John, I'm like, "John, so we're just going to show it?" He's like, "Yeah. You got a problem with that?" I'm thinking, do I? I guess I don't. And he was so right on. He was so, see, that's the stuff. It's like you learn all these things. And it's like, I'm like, all right, let's do this. And so Ira brought a projector down to the Cub convention. We were at the Hilton. And I think it was the Hilton on Michigan Avenue. And it was this huge, like, ballroom, not meant for a theater. And so we got a big screen and the projector, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe 300, 400 people are going to come in. Literally, they had 2,000 people. They were standing everywhere. And I am like, oh, my God. And my dad left the convention early. He's like, "Son, tell me how it goes." "All right, Dad. All right, don't worry. I got it handled. I got it covered." So when we showed this thing, it got a standing ovation.
Oh, that's great.
But it's weird. It's weird because I didn't know what to expect, right? And so me and Tim Kovsak and Billy Polano, we're just like, what's going to happen here? And when that happened, all I could think is like, "John McDonough, thank you." Like, I get it now. And from there, all the reviews, like reporters talked about it, and then we did our distribution thing, and it was like one of those miracle setups that you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what's coming next. You just keep plowing ahead and doing the right thing. Like if someone says, "I'm putting on okay, let's put it on for free because you know something I don't know," and not getting in your own way. And so I did that because I think I did that because it was my dad. Like, I'm like, okay, no one mess with my dad. Because, you could have so many different people come in and take you a wrong way, but I knew it was my dad. And even though he wasn't like there with us, making this, he was. We're shooting him, but I'm talking about when you're selling it. Mm-hmm. But everyone knew that. Ira knew that. Ira was protecting my dad. He was protecting the Cubs. The Cubs were protecting my dad and the movie. So when you finally, I'm like, this is what it's like when you get support for something that's worthy. And
it became a big success. You're selling all those DVDs on your website,
it became everything that we hoped it would be. And we learned a lot of stuff, and we started doing different things in an independent world that weren't done before. We made our own DVDs because I got screwed on my first film. So I'm like, no, we're going to do this ourselves. We have a website. We wound up selling over 40,000 DVDs on our website alone directly to our customer.
And so we could talk to them. We could, I could give them autographs they wanted. So it was just a beautiful thing. And for 5 years, that was the greatest part of my filmmaking career at that time. And it dealt with my dad. And I think when you have a main character like him, you can't go wrong, but you better not screw it up. And that was kind of my thing, is like, don't screw it up, just do all the right things. And there was just a lot of heart around it all, and dedication and focus. So I like became something that I wanted to be. Maybe as a ball player, I started becoming as a filmmaker, and very dedicated to the craft.
And you could say that, like your dad, when he was in Seattle and he was, taking all those ground balls and learning how to play third base with, his sister Adeline, he's learning his craft and fine tuning it. And you did the same thing, and it's you're constantly learning and working. And I mean, you are the hardest working person I know. You're such an inspiration. And so I know that you get that from your dad. And
it's been in me. Sometimes it wasn't ignited for some reasons of being self-conscious about a lot of their stuff. But when it did get ignited, and I was thankful it did. And like, I remember we were talking with Bonnie Hunt about Blue Collar Famous, and I said about just the other day about This Old Cub, making This Old Cub. I look back at it now, was the greatest thing. It saved me in so many, like, I don't want to say, like, at the time I'm like, it didn't save me then. I didn't know that, but I look back at it and go, it got me to be a part of my dad's broadcasting career. I traveled with the Cubs. I got to meet the people who worked with them every day that I was around when I was a kid. So it brought me to another level.
Now you're combining both your dreams, right? So you're having a little bit of that baseball fantasy life coming into your dream of the movie business combined. So
yeah,
it's a perfect.
But it was the time I spent with him, the time that we became like
friends.
Yeah, like father and son to another level. So, and then again, I'm just speaking for myself on that. I feel like he got to see that, okay, he knows what he's doing, and that's always good for a son to know that the father thinks like, okay, you're doing something right here.
Right.
And not saying like, but it's just, it's all the above. It's just, you're finding your identity in something that.
And he's watching you do it.
Yeah. And about your dad that you wanted to be like. So there's so much going on. So much going on that I was thankful for the first movie I did, because I don't think I could have done This Old Cub if I didn't do that first movie, Liar's Poker. So there was so many things that you just don't know where you're going to end up in dark times. And you go, okay, here's the light. And it was a light for my dad too. People got to see my dad in a different space. Like, he was known as the hard-nosed guy. Some reporters in New York didn't like him. He was always like misunderstood. Like, if they really saw how he grew up and the baseball dedication, the life, the commitment, what he did with his disease, if they knew all that, these writers would have voted him in the first 5 years. Not saying that you get in because you're diabetes, but you get in he had the stats. He had the stats. So, but now you put a character clause, and now they took a negative side that they thought my dad was this kind of bully, maybe, because when he got out there, he played harder than most people. Or there was a New York bias, or there was a player bias. All these political things that come out. But when you come to the essence of the man, there is not a better portrait of a ball player than my father. There isn't. There is not. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone. That from day one, what this guy started doing and how he got motivated, a father leaving him, and he gets to the big leagues from a place of a father walking out when he's 7 and gets there the right way. And he got there because of love from his mom and his sister Adeline. If he didn't have that love, it's a different ball game. But that's how much he loved the game. He knew that he was supposed to play it. He knew
that it was a gift. He knew, he appreciated every moment of it. That's why he loved the fans. He had
And let me
gratitude.
ask you something. Do you appreciate every moment of your career?
I do. I appreciate my journey now. I'm turning 60 tomorrow. And what I do appreciate is the journey. Like, is this exploration that I never knew I was going to go down. And so, yes, I love everything about it now. I might have wished that I could have done things different on certain movies and different people that I worked with, or, didn't run into this person. But I'm like, no. Now I'm like, no. Every part of it, I didn't feel that way for a long time, where I can say I've lived a journey too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm proud
And
of
we
it.
didn't get into all the journey because, you did Jake's Corner, Off the Boulevard,
Yeah.
Dead 5 Heartbeats, you wrote Hell's Angels.
Dead and Five Heartbeats,
Yeah.
and just me and you doing what we did on that film. And, I talk about my brother being the kind of the wild one as a kid, kind of the one that, when my dad got, verbally accosted by a beer vendor from the Don Young incident after the game. And I'm like, Dad, don't hit him. My brother's like, hit him. I turned into my brother in a way. And I love that in a way that I went and made a movie with the Hells Angels. And let me tell you, there's a lot that, first of all, filmmakers, you want to go tell a cool story, you go for it, and you go on the journey, you go on basically like this is a once in a lifetime thing. And what I got out of that, doing Dead and Five Heartbeats, now it's a small independent film, but I did get to write Hells Angels for Fox 2000 with Rob Weiss because of my relationship with Sonny Barger, because of my relationship with the Hells Angels. And I was always a filmmaker.
Because your skill as a writer.
But also because of myself as a person, meaning
Yes.
these guys, if you can get out of there unscathed doing a movie with the Hells Angels, then you did something right, and so
For sure.
we both did that, and we got along with everyone, and they reminded me of guys like Beckert and all the guys in the clubhouse, because they have their clubhouse, they have their world, they have their own universe. And I really liked that. And as long as you're respectful, and they always knew as a filmmaker, I wasn't trying to be them, never would be. And that's the difference of like respecting someone's culture. And that made me go out and understand another culture and understand another survival, group of people, because misfits get together. And I'm
similar to the movie business.
Yes, and I feel like
yeah.
we're two misfits in a way that met each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't have time to really get into all of the rest of this, because there's so many stories that we can tell about Dead and Five Heartbeats and even Off the Boulevard. I mean, that was a documentary that we did together, which is, all these movies you can buy on Santo Films.
But, okay, you're closing out here, but I feel like when I say that, when I talk about like Dead and Five Heartbeats, I don't look at the movies anymore like, oh, that, yeah, we could have shot that better. We went out and made a movie in 24 days with motorcycle clubs.
Yeah.
That the culture loves. And we only made it for the culture. How it was made was done on a level of dedication from both the side of the motorcycle culture to the filmmaking culture.
It's an incredible amount
it is,
that we did with that movie, with just the slim budget that we had, and you had the respect to say, hey, yeah, I can get you your money back. I mean, we're gonna do well on this movie, and we put everything into that movie. I even edited the 3D.
You did so much, babe. We just, but we existed in a culture, and that was the cool thing about it. We existed in the culture, and we were all in. And I feel like when you are all in on something, no matter what it is, find the good in it and be all in.
That's great. That's the title of this episode. Well, thank you for listening. Just want to add, please go to santofilms.com. Check out all the movies we were just talking about. And special thanks to our cool Cracker Jacks.
Can I say something about the Cracker Jacks? Listen, we need some more cool Cracker Jacks. Now, I don't even know if people know what cool Cracker Jacks are. They get the episodes a week before. I will say their name after every episode.
And if we ever do any live streams,
we do any live streams. You'll be part, but you're part of this group. It's $10 a month, and you get all the content. We got so much cool content
that we don't put on the air
And
for our
we're
regular
gonna have
show.
a new episode dropping soon.
New
which-
episode dropping soon with Vince Rizzo, where my dad parked at his gas station. Just a beautiful story about Vince and his family. Had the gas station since 1947, just after World War II. My dad parked there. Becker, everyone started parking there. Now they got a bar right next to Bernie's, Dillman's, and just a beautiful family story there. But just the stuff like, the three Vinces, like his father, then Vince Jr., then Vince the Third, but all part of the aura of Wrigley Field.
So go listen. It's
Yeah,
gonna be up soon.
but here's, I don't want, the cool Cracker Jacks is that we need you. So
It really helps us. I mean,
Yeah.
we're putting a lot
you get a
of
lot,
effort into the
and
show.
we're going to keep giving good content on that side. So I hope you subscribe. We like the support.
Thank you so much. So thanks to our cool Cracker Jacks, Scott Nelson, Jim McCauley, Debbie Foley, Sherry Matarisi, Terry Rankin-Gurovitz, Terry O'Brien, and Gary Tallman. The show is made possible by all of them, to all of our subscribers, and to you for listening. Please, if you want to support the show, go over to our Patreon page. You can click the link below this episode, or you can go to www.peanutspopcornandcrackerjacks.com. And remember to click the follow button for next week's episode. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And don't hesitate to write. Give us suggestions. Tell us how you're liking the show. Email jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com or leave a comment on Spotify. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. This podcast means a lot to us.
We'll see you in 10 days. Toodaloo.
SantoFilms.com, the place to buy This Old Cub DVDs, posters, and This Old Cub t-shirts. Get yourself one now at SantoFilms.com.